Oh, really? At all? I'm talking. Can people hear us? Can people hear me? Oh God. Um, uh, okay. Weird. Can people hear Kate? Kate, just type my name if you can hear me. Um, and then we will, okay. That's okay. Ah, there we go. Just me, Kate. That's great. Um, anyone else a fan of Rent? So when Ben was giving that little
Can people hear
December
me now?
24th, 5 p.m. I can hear you.
So
There we go.
Kate can hear me, and people seem to be able to see me. Um, okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes, Ben,
Yes.
you're back.
Okay.
Okay, good.
All right.
Yay. That's
Um,
good.
so you were talking about Rent. I'm going to
I
go
was
look
gonna,
for Tim Miller.
yeah, I was looking and then I stopped. I'm sorry. That was Tim Morgan. That was difficult. Yeah, when I was in middle school, high school, Rent the musical came out and was a life-changing musical at the time that it came out for a lot of people, kind of like a redefine the genre based on La Boheme, by the way. Did you know that? I don't know if you knew that.
Oh yeah, of
Okay,
course.
yeah. You would know that. I didn't know that. That piece of culture was lost to me until much later. I just thought it was a really like subversive musical and I loved it. But there's this great line in Rent that starts, the first line of Rent starts December 24th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From here on in, I shoot without a script. And I could literally sing that entire musical based on any like lyric that you give me from within it. Like going from that type of line. But anyways, when you started saying today is December 24th, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I was like, oh my
There you
God,
go. And I
Ben.
think, I said on Twitter that Tim is going to do the Messiah, a performance of the entire oratorio himself. And
Oh,
so you should do Rent, and the two of you together. I'll just sit back and watch, and it'll be great. Hello, Tim Miller.
Hello. I was hoping I'd have like all the my festive wrapping
I
paper in the
love it.
background, but it's just my big
Oh
face.
no, no, we can.
It is
Let's
really
let's see
festive.
it.
You
Oh
have a
yeah, see,
lot
we're
of
wrapping.
gift
It's very
We got a
nice.
poinsettia. We've got our disco themed tree right here.
Aw,
Ooh, I love it.
that is really sweet. That's really nice.
You
But
know,
do you
excited about this
have
year.
one of these?
What is
What's
that? Is
that?
that a Christmas cracker?
Yeah.
Woo!
Oh, and it didn't work
Is this like some sort of
because I'm
elitist
Jewish.
Northeast thing?
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
a
Oh,
It's an English
it's a
thing.
British thing. They ruin
British.
Yeah,
everything.
but it comes with a
You guys.
crown, so I'll wear the crown. It was
Oh, it
given to
does?
me by some English friends.
Oh, I like to. I don't have anything. I just
But
wore.
the
I was giving my
explosive didn't
family gifts.
work. Um,
Is that a
oh
skull
Ben,
on
that
well.
looks
that?
great.
Yeah, it's supposed to crack and then the crown emerges, but no. Uh, so, how are
It's
you?
like the
Cheers.
point.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Cheers,
How many? I saw
Ben.
your tweet this morning. 27 days.
27 days, which is only three times. Should we think of it as 9 sets of 3 or 9 days sounds long, so I think we should just sound. We only have to do not
Three
nine
sets
more
of
sets of
nine.
3 days.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I'm feeling good. Every time I talk to Ben Wittes, I'm just reminded about his post-election pick me up, congratulations text, and just revelry and celebratory nature that attitude that he had in
And
our
can,
private text, and I appreciated that, and I'm always it always buoys me just to see you now because I'm reminded of our victory again.
And can I just remind you that in this period when everyone was saying he's going to have a coup, like I was the one who said actually there's a lot of automaticity in the process, and there are these people who he doesn't control who certify elections and count votes, and they're county commissioners,
Yeah.
and then these people that don't report to him, electors, go and do the electoral vote, and so it's just kind of, in a weird way, emotionally satisfying to see him like pulling all these levers and pushing all these buttons on this switchboard of anti-democratic violence, and realizing that it's not the switchboard actually just isn't connected to anything underneath.
Yeah, I'm with you though. I will say this: I'm getting a little tired of winning. We've won so many times now. I'm getting a little tired of
You're
winning.
kind of like the New England Patriots. Should we just like deflate you and put you out of your misery?
Yeah, it's time, and I think that this is maybe a good opportunity to reflect on how long this period is, the interregnum.
Yes.
I mean, like, it's not as if it's 1780 and the winner has to like get on horseback and gallop from Massachusetts down to Philadelphia, to succeed to the presidency. It's a modern time, and I think that, I don't know, maybe we can get this new president in by Black Friday. It's like, boom, Thanksgiving, and then Black Friday, like, we get the new president in. That might be something to consider going forward.
In Britain, they do it in a couple of days. It's like, but they don't replace nearly as much of the government.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but this feels like something. I mean, look, if Trump and like the little Chris Christie operation, the Christie Kushner operation, was able to like pull it together, I feel like a professional Joe Biden operation could have gotten this thing up and going in 3 weeks. Like, I think that like by Thanksgiving we could have been rocking and rolling and in much better shape.
It's true, although to do that, I mean, you'd have to change a few things that are, I think, changeable. Like, for example, have the vote count go and the certifications go much faster.
Yeah.
But there's no reason why the electoral vote is received, even without changing any state laws or anything. You have the electoral vote count on December 14th. Why doesn't the president take office, Congress counts the votes the next day and the president takes office December 16th, right? You could speed it up by a month.
Yeah, I'll take that. That seems better by comparison. I don't know.
I mean, you say that now, but like, I know I hate to be that person, but like, you would have hated this if like there was like not, I don't know, I would have hated an extra month of Trump on the other end of this. It was like bad enough when he was elected in 2016. If we had to like take him like that much earlier.
That's true. There is just something especially dangerous though about the interregnum versus the beginning of a term. I don't know. And the pardon thing, I mean, obviously this is in the Constitution. This is like, West Wing Sorkin stuff, not actually going to happen. But like, it also makes me feel like we should ban. Like, shouldn't you have to pardon the people you're going to pardon before the election? Like, shouldn't pardon power be over? Like, once you're a lame duck, I feel like pardoning should be part of the lameness. What is the argument against that?
I said, like, why do we have the pardon power to begin with? I do not understand this.
Oh, I am such a fan of the pardon power.
I like pardon too.
Really?
And I
think you're like that person who like really likes like that random fan that runs onto like the field with no shirt on and like has like
no. I want to defend the pardon power, including letting lame ducks pardon people.
No, okay, let's hear it. But no.
Okay, so there are Trump is abusing the power, and he will abuse whatever powers he has. But there are a lot of pardons that are really worthy and really politically difficult. And the traditional way to handle those is to save them until you're leaving office and you're a lame duck and do it then. And you're not going to have to, and those include a lot of pardons that I wouldn't give back. I mean, the number of nonviolent drug offenders who are not in office today because Barack Obama commuted their sentences in the waning days of his presidency. It's a large number of people. The number of...
Couldn't he have done that in 2013? Like, was that really gonna...
He started, but the numbers accelerated as he was getting ready to leave office. And, I think that's a good thing that we have that opportunity. If you give Donald Trump the pardon power, he will abuse the pardon power. But if you give him the appointments power, he will abuse that and make Sidney Powell, Lord High Commissioner for voter fraud. If you give him whatever powers you give him, he's going to abuse. That's a really good reason not to elect him. It doesn't seem to me a reason to tear up the structure of the presidency.
Okay, Tim, you make your argument for pardons, and then I will make my serious argument against pardons to both of you.
So I agree. The part of the pardons that I like is that I agree with Ben. I think that there should be an extra judicial way to take care of wrongs, to right wrongs, and it seems like as good of a system as any. I agree with Ben that on balance, more of the pardons have been just than unjust over the course of my lifetime. And generally, most presidents give pretty fulsome defenses of their pardons. If anything, I think that Obama underutilized his pardon power. I think that criminal justice reform experts would generally say that. But the lame duck thing is just begging for abuse. And while I hear, Ben, that maybe you lose some pardons of some controversial people who deserve it, things of that nature, if you do in the lame duck. I just think that Donald Trump should be a moment for us to revisit executive powers of a lot of kinds that maybe could be used for good on balance, but I just think that
why
it should be
isn't
a
the
wake-up
answer?
call.
But why isn't the answer to this problem the first thing we were talking about, which is just shortening the lame duck period? If we could, if we could make it, instead of 4 months, a month and a half, that would give the new administration plenty of time to, name a deputy assistant secretary for, beard growing, and it would give the outgoing people plenty of time to take their bribes and do their thing. But it seems to me that the problem you're identifying is not really a problem with the pardon. It's a problem with this lengthy period where we're stuck with, James Buchanan.
Yeah, I think it's both. I don't know, Kate. What's your anti-pardon view?
My anti-pardon view is that pardons are like an ends, and they do not address the means by which these terrible decisions are raised. So I agree that there are so many egregious decisions that come out of a systemically racist, sexist criminal justice system. But by and large, if you look at the people who are pardoned, it's not people who Obama pardoned that were nonviolent drug offenders. It's people like fucking Michael Flynn, and these high profile kind of pardons that the president deigns to pay attention to, and this is, and for me, the pardon power is this out. It is this final moment of oh, well, the president might pardon us, or we've exhausted every avenue except for this moment in which we could still have a pardon. And it feels very regal and king-like to me, and very anti-democratic. It feels very there is one final ruler who can kind of save you or kind of not care. And your access to that caring and the political stature in which you present your case, i.e. can this political person tether their entire reputation to your reputation if they pardon you, is really fraught. And so people who are non-violent drug offenders get pardoned, maybe, but there's a ton of people who have minor violent drug offenses or drug pasts that have nothing to do with why they're still in prison, and they're not pardoned because they were slightly too controversial for Obama to pardon. And so I think that is I think that the whole mechanism is bullshit. And if we instead funneled that same energy into some type of, as Tim said, there needs to be a check on kind of the failures of the justice system. Yes. Could we make a new, more systematic means of doing that, rather than the mercurial whims of a crazy orange-haired man? I don't know.
It feels like there could be a better system. Have you guys seen the Steve Stockman's wife ode to Kim Jong-un video? This is something that I highly
No.
I would love to
recommend.
hear
If you've
this.
not seen it, please, guys, somebody can put it in the chat. Steve, it was in JVL's Bulwark newsletter one of the days this week, I think. It is creepy. It is really creepy. It's like Steve Stockman's wife, straight to camera, talking about how she's scared he's going to get COVID in jail, which is interesting because I thought that COVID was just kind of like the sniffles, according to Donald Trump, and that she just appreciates his leadership and draining the swamp, and that Steve was just like him. He also wanted to drain the swamp, and that Steve knows that Donald Trump will give us 3,000 days of wheat harvest this year. It is like extremely bizarre.
That's really weird. What was behind it?
I don't think that Steve.
No, I like the crown.
So Collins and Hunter, this is of the pardons of the former Republican congressmen who were pardoned. They endorsed Trump, so they had a personal relationship. This Steve Stockman fellow who had like a series of nonprofits that he was funneling to him and his wife so that they could like live in a McMansion somewhere to the tune of a couple $1 million. He was pre-Trump. He was yesterday's man in the Republican Party, and so I think that this video was like to let her know that even though he wasn't around to like endorse him since he's been in jail, he's been MAGA from day one. And so this is, I think, speaks to your absurdity of the system. And I also, if you would wrote today, if you haven't seen it, about the Paul Manafort one, which I stand as the worst, as the most enraging and outrageous and worst pardon of my lifetime. I think, but I don't really even think that there's a close second. I don't know where you would stand on that, Ben.
Well, I think it is. Well, let's compare it to what would be a close second if there were one, right? So it is every bit as corrupt and unjust.
Are you talking about Mark Rich or Stone?
As Mark Rich.
No. Okay.
In the sense that Mark Rich was a fugitive, literally a fugitive from justice, whose wife
Where
gave
was he
hundreds.
living when the
Switzerland.
pardon came in? Okay.
Switzerland. And he was a fugitive on very serious crimes. He was a fugitive for, violating the embargo against the Iranians and, hiding the proceeds from that from tax authorities. I mean, Mark Rich was a seriously bad guy, and he had been abroad for since the late skip town in the late 1970s. It was a very corrupt deal, and his ex-wife had given a huge amount of money to the DNC to facilitate it. So Manafort is every bit as corrupt as that, and every bit as unjust. I mean, he was a serious criminal who had pled out to avoid a second jury trial. He could have ended up doing a shitload of time. He ended up with, I think it was a 7-year-ish. Broke his plea. Ended up with something like a 7 or 8 year sentence, which was fairly generous under the circumstances, candidly. But it has this additional element that the Mark Rich pardon did not have, which is that, like Flynn, there is a self-protective, active obstruction of justice element, whether it meets the terms of the obstruction statute or not. This is a guy who the president publicly kind of dangled a pardon for and urged not to cooperate, holding the pardon out as a possibility. Manafort then breaches his plea agreement in order to not give the government, which is to say the Mueller folks, the information they want. To the extent there's a major hole on collusion questions in the Mueller report, which there kind of is, it is a hole that could probably be filled from Manafort's head, which is to say, what was the goal of giving Konstantin Kilimnik all that internal data? Why was he doing that, and what was he expecting to happen with that Trump polling data? And of course, Manafort then breaches the agreement, creates that hole, and then in fact gets his pardon. So I think it's about as corrupt as it is possible to be. It's kind of where the Mark Rich pardon and the Michael Flynn pardon crash into each other. It is completely unsurprising in the fact, like, I literally
my Christmas
wrote...
rage is boiling right now. Like my eggnog is boiling again. I wrote the article just because like I saw Maggie's tweet about this last night, and like in like 40 minutes, I was just like, "This treasonous motherfucker!" Like, this is unfucking believable. And just listening to you recap everything, my rage is being
But weren't you completely expecting it?
I'm
I mean, I literally wrote last week that it was going to happen.
Yeah. Yes, I was expecting it. But, you know, sometimes things have to actually happen for them to really sink in and really sit with you, you know. And I don't know, you know, there's been a lot happening in this little interregnum here, you know. We've been celebrating our daily victories against the president and, like, the clown coup. And, you know, my focus wasn't on it until it had happened. But, no, I know it's the obvious thing that he's going to do, but it still is just... I mean, like the word I use in the headline, and I don't use it lightly. It's like it literally is traitorous. I mean, it's not any, you know, it's as traitorous of a thing that has happened. Like he literally was in league with the people that were attacking our democracy, right? We don't know the extent of how much he was in league with them on those activities in particular, but we do know that he was compromised by and colluding with Russian officials. The Republican, not the Mueller report, the Republican Senate Intel report said as much, right? And so, you know, to your point, there is an extra little connector, an extra tie there that we don't know whether that exists or not because he lied. You know, because he obstructed the truth and didn't tell it and blocked, you know, the Kalimnik aspect of this from investigators. So, I mean, he, in the most literal sense, betrayed the country.
As Jonathan Rauch wrote a couple of years ago, I know it's not technically treason, but it's not treason.
Right. Right.
Can we, like, do we think that the most controversial pardons are, like, I mean, there's already been a few controversial pardons, but, like, I would say that they're not, that the worst is yet to come, right? Like, Ben?
Well, I'm not sure. Like, so who's left on the table who would be more controversial?
I think.
So, right, there are the preemptive pardons. There's Rudy.
Yeah.
There's the self-pardon possibility.
Yep.
There's various categories of preemptive pardon. I assume he will do that. I mean, why not do it? If you look at it from his point of view rather than from the point of view of somebody who believes in law and patriotism and that sort of thing.
This is the fundamental problem that I have with this, which is like that it's monarchical, like that there is like this, like this is his last chance to be king. This is like literally the only thing that's particularly king-like about, that's like a vestige of like of our, you know, in our democratic republic of like this kind of thing. And
I bristle at that too.
I
bristle at that as well. I don't like kings.
Yeah. I don't like kings. Like,
to hell with you, King George.
If we could have if we could have some type of like literal third party that was some type of group of 50 that literally only looked at pardons, then we elected, I'd be fine with that. If that was what we wanted to do, was like some type of fail safe of like 50 people that looked at pardons and like they were and they weren't the Supreme Court. They did make precedent. It was just case by case basis. It was like a lot less politics and a lot less law. And they just was like, it was basically only built on sentencing. Like, I would be okay with that. I have such a problem with like an executive being in charge of this. But like, to your point, I think that he has nothing to stop him at all.
All right. So the poll is up. The first poll anyway. Do you think the pardon power should be nixed? You've got a Kate option,
No one's going
a
to
Ben
agree with
option,
me.
and a Tim option up there.
No one ever agrees with me. Everyone agrees with you too.
I think I'm gonna take this one. I feel pretty confident that I have the populist view here. I would, just to Kate's point, I think that there's definitely something else to come, right? It might just be him or whatever, but the Mark Rich pardon happened on inauguration morning. Is that right?
Yes.
It was inauguration morning.
And as did the Susan McDougal pardon, which people forget about. But the Susan McDougal pardon was a Flynn self-protective pardon. This was a woman who had gone into contempt and spent a number of months in jail for contempt for refusing to testify against Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton pardoned her on his way out the door.
That was also inauguration morning, right?
All of them. Bill Clinton pardoned his brother. I'm sorry?
Sketchy as fuck. This is like my point. This is like some people were saying in the chat that basically like it was my problem with the pardon power was Trump. That is absolutely incorrect. Like 100% I think the pardon power is like in do you not think that people give money to presidential campaigns based on the idea that there might someday be
want to hear
a presidential pardon?
You want to hear a heartwarming story about that?
Please.
Actually, about the way the pardon power is supposed to work. I forget this guy's name, but he was a old Republican kind of apparatchik politician, and he applied for a pardon, and George W. Bush granted him a pardon. And within hours, it came out that he had given a lot of money to the Bush campaign or the RNC. And the Bush White House was caught completely flat-footed by this. They actually didn't know it. And they had not physically delivered the pardon to him. And a pardon literally has to be pled to be real. So they revoked it and tore it up, never delivered it, and apologized. And that is the way the system should work, you know? Like, I think it's super sweet. It's like, and
There's just a bunch of stuff
took
about
it back.
Presidency.
They were like, oops.
There's a bunch of stuff about the Clinton presidency, and this is like maybe for a longer conversation, but I think Tim would completely agree with me about this. But like, I felt as like a liberal that I was like almost gaslit about like what happened with the Clinton presidency, because people came out of the Clinton presidency and 2 years later it was like he could have done no wrong. There was never like this impeachment procedure. He was like he and Hillary, this bastion of like the progressive left, in which they had like still yet to embrace gay rights or gay marriage. And then they had, and I'm just going to say that I also like kind of very quietly like went along with this. I didn't speak up against this. People said this about them, and I was like, maybe I misremembered.
Did you listen to the slow burn on Lewinsky? I had like many Democrats say to me after listening to the slow burn on Lewinsky, which is like, I'm out on Bill. Like I somehow blocked. You know, a lot of them were our age, Kate. Like, so like they were young when it was happening. Like they were interested in politics, but young. It's like the details. You know, like for me, I remember the Lewinsky thing thinking I was in like a sophomore in high school at the time. And it's like, to me, Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton were like kind of the same age, right? It's like anybody who is like
older than me.
Yeah, anybody who's like out of college.
Ben and I talked about how this was how I learned a key sexual term was like through the scandal. I remember like coming home and being like, "Hey, mom,
blue dress."
I was like a late 30s something man. I look back on it, I'm like a 22-year-old or whatever she was, and Bill Clinton are not like that is you know, my view on it is completely different than as like a 15-year-old who it's like, I don't know.
Well, I gotta say, as somebody who was appalled by it at the time, I did not vote for Clinton in 1996 because of the Paula Jones case. And
I didn't
because
I wasn't of age to vote yet.
Yeah, because you weren't born.
Me neither.
I always found it mystifying and disgusting how many Dems were, particularly Dems who were willing to condemn Clarence Thomas, and were willing to look the other way, not just about, like, Monica Lewinsky was one thing, but Kathleen Willey and was an astonishing set of allegations that I've never had any reason to think were anything other than true. And the
Juanita's gone full Q, so I'm not. I don't know what to think about Juanita anymore.
what Juanita Broderick.
Who's Juanita?
So she's
Juanita
become a
Broderick.
crazy person, but she was not a crazy person in the late 1990s, and she did not come forward willingly. I've always thought there was this disturbing probability that story was true. And look, Bill Clinton was a super complicated guy, but he would have been taken down had that stuff happened more recently. And it's some of us found it appalling at the time.
Well, I feel like you're a rare person that kind of stood on that principle, and it felt very political at the, like, looking back at, like, Tim, when you think about, I would be fascinated to hear where did you grow up again, Tim?
Wait, but before you say that, Tim, answer that, I want to address something that Ann Kornhauser just put in the chat, which is the word Isikoff. Mike Isikoff took Paula Jones's story seriously. He basically lost his job at the Washington Post over it. He
Great point.
did what anybody today who did what Mike Isikoff did would be understood to have been doing Me Too reporting, and would be considered a very admirable reporter, and he was regarded as a right-wing crank, which he never was. And so that shows you how times have changed. He didn't, he was understood to be a serious reporter, but somebody he was not treated like Ronan Farrow or,
Right.
right? Like, and, I think there are a lot of people.
Reasons that people before Ronan Farrow were not treated like Ronan Farrow. Because Ronan Farrow is fucking Ronan Farrow.
Well, fair enough. I just want to say there are a lot of people who owe Mike Isikoff an apology. Anyway, you were saying, Tim.
Yeah, I don't know what your question was. Why I grew up in Denver. What was that? What did I think about Clinton at the time? Was that your question?
Yeah, it was like kind of like as you were like what was your high school like? What were you like?
Yeah,
kind
so
of
I
like,
went to an all
what do you
boys.
remember?
Yeah, I was an all-boys Catholic high school when all this was going down. So, I was
so
like
much.
a contrarian asshole reading Ayn Rand. And like I was horrible. I was horrible. So
I was also
I-
reading Ayn Rand in a contrarian asshole, but I was in a public school.
yeah, I mean, she might be on here because she's like, she's probably not, but she's like follows our stuff now. But I was really into politics and history, and my AP history teacher at the time was a wonderful woman named Julie Shipman, and I was horrible to her because she was like a little bit liberal. Like nowadays, she's like she's Joe Biden. She's stayed the same, moved to the center of the party, but back then she seemed like a horrible liberal to me. And she would make us do things like, write an essay on the most important woman in American history, and like I would be like, there were no important women in American history. I mean, I was a horrible 16-year-old brat. Like, so
I have a lot
so that let's just
gay
put that
vibes
in
coming out of
context,
that,
okay?
too.
And I have
like 80s and 90s gay vibes coming out of that. But
yeah, I have no excuse. Yes, closet gay, dealing with all that. So no excuses. But I was horrible. But yeah, I was kind of a contrarian Republican. But to be honest, the Lewinsky thing never really. I didn't think it was a big deal. But because I didn't have the Me Too perspective. At the time, my contrarian take on it was like most kids at my Catholic school, most teachers at my Catholic school were like, "This is really bad," and I was like, "Is this really the bad thing?" Like I remember being much more upset about Elian. Like Elian Gonzalez was like my radicalized anti-Clinton thing, because I felt like, and this has stuck with me to this day, but I felt like that was, at the time I had been brought to believe that like my Republican ideology was like, this is the land of freedom and everybody is welcome here and we're the shining city on the hill, and like this kid got on a raft to get over here, and like the communist loving Clintons are sending him back to Cuba. I had a very unsophisticated view of it, but like my general kind of take is still the same actually. But that was like the outrage that was much more sticky for me than.
And so did you like go to college and continue like a concert, like a kind of like did that?
So I worked for the guy. So in high school, I volunteered for a guy running for governor named Bill Owens, who was like supposed to be the next big thing, and then he had a love child himself. I was maybe another reason I was sympathetic.
Back in the days when that would kill your political career.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you run a campaign ad. My love child supports me too.
Yeah, exactly. My baby mama is hot.
Yeah.
Look at how hot my baby mama is. But no, so I interned for him in high school, and that's how I got addicted to politics. Actually, he won his first race against Gail Shetler, who was the lieutenant governor. It was an open governor's race by like 1,200 votes at like 4 a.m. And, I had interned on the campaign, and, I was like, I stood out because I was 16. I looked like I was 12, and everybody kept being like, who's your dad? And I'm like, I don't know. My dad is a mutual fund manager. I just like politics. And so I was there as like a teenager, like late into the night, sneaking drinks from the, from the 20 somethings who worked on the campaign. And, we won that in a very close race. And I got addicted to the, honestly, to the sport of it as much as anything.
I was kind of like a super, like, I don't know. I was always like I did too much. I was like in Science Olympiad and president of Amnesty International, and also mock trial, and also
Model UN?
Model UN.
Did you meet George Papadopoulos in that?
Did you go to Naaman in Washington, D.C.?
George Papadopoulos.
Did you go to Naaman? Could we have met at Naaman? Okay, that was the National Model UN Championships. I did win an award there.
I didn't do that, but I did. Like I did take delight. I think the one year in our small regional competition, I was allowed to have we were allowed to beat Djibouti, which we just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. That was kind of like, it was, you're fucking teenagers. It's just like Model UN. It's hilarious.
There's a Frank Zappa album named that.
What, Djibouti?
Shake Your Booty.
Shake Your Booty.
Oh, Shake Your Booty. But there's an actual country.
Yeah, there is a country. Which, if you're 16 and you're doing Model UN, Beat Your Booty is a fun.
I was an elite Model UN and mock trial competitor as my junior year in high school, and then my senior year I was introduced to marijuana, which that is not on the wall, by the way. People say that is not marijuana, it is palms. But I was introduced to marijuana my senior year, and like my Model UN and mock trial skills and interest went down heavily, and so I did not kind of repeat my championship. And so kids out there, don't do marijuana your senior year in high school. I should have been back-to-back champions, but I was not because my interest waned.
Have you regretted this the entire subsequent
period
of your life?
I met some of my best friends ever during that time. It was fine. It was good. I have a little bit of regret because the Model UN thing was fine. I ended up. Model UN is not that competitive, let's be honest. Like I was
George Papadopoulos.
Yeah, George Papadopoulos. Like I was able to be pretty good still while also partying. I did feel bad about my mock trial team, so I sort of let down because that was real work. I mean, did you do mock trial? Okay, like that was like real work.
Yes, and I did mock trial for all 4 years of high school and college, and it was crazy. Like, no, it was a ton of work. Mock trial was crazy because you really had to know shit. You couldn't wing it. It was really hard. But Model UN, I wrote like a few things and like presented them, and it was clear I was the only person who would put thought into it whatsoever. Right. And I was like, okay, I win.
It was not a competitive set.
Yeah, it was not competitive. Yeah. So, but like to the Lewinsky kind of thing and how it changed, and like Clinton and how it changed my thing. Like, I I have a few memories. One memory is like seeing the Iraq War depicted on. This is one of my earliest memories. It must have been in second or third grade. Sorry, Ben. But I was like very young, and I was seeing the Iraq War depicted on TV, and I was like, "Why are these people killing each other? This is crazy. Like, why do people do this to each other?" And my dad just kind of looking at me and being like, "It's like a long conversation. Let's have it later." That I'm sure every parent has had with their kids at some point. And then the much more awkward conversation around Lewinsky and the impeachment, and like how our like social studies and civics like teachers dealt with that, which was basically to ignore it. But like looking like, and I agree with Tim, like I really saw that, like I didn't see, like there was no part of me that understood kind of like sexual consent and like the complications of sexual consent, or like the power dynamics of consent. And like to me this was just, it just felt like a sex scandal, which there had been minor like pop-ups in my brain of like things like that before, and so this was just a major one. And so that was like what this all was. But it was like super defining. It was like super defining that a president went through it. It was super defining that like there was this whole thing and that nothing happened with it. And then it was like super defining that it disappeared. Like that it just completely disappeared. And that this alternative narrative of this person emerged, and was very palpable. And it didn't necessarily feel political. Well, it probably was driven by politics, how that narrative reemerged. But to me, it felt organic, and it felt slightly like, it felt kind of like, it was like, oh, okay, we're all okay with sexual like assault or sexual like molestation or sexual harassment, kind of. Like, and that was like very much, and so like I literally remember, and I mean, I am such a huge feminist, Ben, you know this, and like all of these things, but like I remember the Weinstein headline coming out in the New York Times and then breaking that story, and I turned to John and I said, why is this something that is new or needs reporting? Like, I don't understand why this is happening. This is just a thing that happens to everyone. Like, this isn't worth reporting on. And like the fact that changed, how much that changed the narrative, like in that, like, I mean, and you know, obviously I thought it needed reporting on, like, this is great. Like, I was like, but I was also kind of like, wait, I have been subverting all of these kind of like norm violations and all of these kind of violations because of XYZ, very rational factors, like the fact that we're like electing, like, that now Bill Clinton runs this huge, incredible, like, global health initiative. Like, right? That's so great. And like, you know, and he's like,
I'm surprised. It's interesting. I'm surprised to hear you say that, because like I thought it was just like my like misogyny and like gay man blindness towards like the woman experience, because like I literally, now when I look at it, I think of me and Monica as peers. Right, like back then, like when it happened, because like me and like Monica's what, 6 years older than me or something. I was a sophomore in high school.
No,
and
she's so, like 10 years older than me. We're we're the same.
So maybe 8 years older than me. So yeah, whatever it is. But like I see us as peers, and Bill is like old, right? Like then, like they seemed like both adults, and this honestly didn't occur to me. This is embarrassing to say, until 2015, when in a political context, before I had left the dark side. And I was like thinking about it and hit from a Hillary perspective, and like how she had, sort of criticized her or whatever, demeaned her. And I was like, and then as like a 30-something, I was like, wait a minute, like this wasn't cool, right? But I thought it was like this light bulb that went off in my head when, like, 20 years later in my mid 30s, and it was just like, why did it take me this long?
But
so it's interesting that you went
for me. For me, it's interesting. For me, no. But I had it for a very specific reason, which was that in 1991, we all ginned ourselves up into outrage about Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill.
Right.
Oh,
and then it was a very small number of years later that you started getting these allegations against Bill Clinton that were whatever their merits. they were worse than the allegations against Clarence Thomas, right? Because the allegation about Paula Jones was that he had dispatched state troopers to go procure her and bring her up to his hotel room. And so he really kind of used state power as governor to kind of, and so for me, the thing that conditioned it was the things that I had been saying to friends about Clarence Thomas very recently. And it was the fact that I'd kind of locked myself in that really affected the way I was able to tell myself what I thought. I wasn't able to say to myself, "Hey, doesn't matter," because I just finished screaming that we shouldn't confirm a Supreme Court justice.
But Tim, do you remember Anita Hill?
I don't remember Anita Hill.
I don't remember Anita Hill.
So I was an adult. I was an adult for Anita Hill, and I remember. Now, interesting question.
To your credit, Ben, I don't consider you an adult.
Yeah, I'm still not an adult, but I was biologically an adult in time for Anita Hill. Christopher, the floor is yours.
Great. Hi, Tim, in Oakland, where I should be for Christmas, but I'm stuck or quarantining in the UK, where we might have it worse.
Ugh, that sucks. It's beautiful. It's 68 degrees. I was sitting out in the sun before I came to join you all, so sorry to rub it in.
Yeah, no problem. Say hello to my dog. Anyway, probably a question that you've heard a million times, but will any Republicans ever pay any price for supporting the criminal and lawless president? I'm wondering, what will 2022 look like, or 2024? Well, of course, there'll be Republicans who will run on being, Trumpists and, saying we should provide this even without him on the ballot. And of course, will there be people who will be punished for being so close to him? How do you see those midterms? And
Christopher, I just want to tell you that my answer to this comes after 3 years of therapy and yoga and a lot of time taking deep breaths, working on my vinyasa flow. And the answer is that none of these people are going to suffer any consequences at all. I politically, I just is the deal. I wish it were not the deal, but the incentives in the way that our system is, with the Senate, with the Electoral College, with the way that the Republican Party base is such that there's no reason to punish any of them. And so, it's possible, hopefully, we can get a little schadenfreude here and there, and somebody can get primaried by an insane person and lose. That might happen to a couple of people, but most of these guys are extremely well insulated politically from the damage to what they've done, because they're in pretty safe, states. I think that there could be a couple of exceptions here and there. Maybe we'll get Ron Johnson. I think we might vindicate ourselves against Ron Johnson in 2 years if he has the balls to run, which he might not. But for the most part, I think a lot of these guys are going to get away with it.
I want to sound an optimistic note on this. Whoa. And I have two words.
They'll die in shame, with shame?
No. I don't want to overstate it, but I have 2 words that should make you all feel a little bit better on this point. Those 2 words are Pete and Wilson. So Pete Wilson was the governor of California, was responsible for the anti-immigrant ballot initiative. He did not pay a political price for this, but he was, with the exception of Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was a bit of a anomaly, he was the last Republican governor of California. And the Republican Party, California used to be a swing state, and it is no longer a competitive state at the statewide level for any office, or much less in national politics. And I think you're seeing something similar start to happen in Arizona. I don't know if it'll go as far, but the people who the Republican Party has alienated over the last few years are the suburban voters whom it can't be viable without appealing to. Now, it can be competitive for a while, but I think the hope for retribution is not that the individuals are going to be in disgrace, but that the party is simply less viable at all sorts of levels than it used to be. And I think that is a very plausible outcome for this. And so I just want to say, if that happens, the party as a whole pays a massive price, but it's not individually exacted from the flesh of Lindsey Graham. That will be personally disappointing in some ways. I mean, the ice cream scoop of shoulder flesh out of Graham would be really satisfying, but it's not. Like, I do think ultimately the more important question is not how the individuals are treated, but how the party apparatus responds and is punished.
I'll say this on a personal level, that this isn't a political retribution, but you can take some joy in the fact that while all these people pretend to be anti-elitists and to hate Hollywood and big tech, and they all deep down want to get invited to the parties, and so I think
don't invite them to your parties, people.
So I think our cultural divide is making that happen less than it did in the past, and so
I couldn't agree more with you, Tim. Don't invite him to your parties. Just invite Monica Lewinsky. Be like, "How are your party, Monica? There's hundreds of people." And I'm like, no.
She deserves an invite.
Sorry. She's amazing.
Hey, Kelly.
Kelly, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. Would it be all right if I asked my sub question that I sort of bootlegged on there? Maybe
sure.
It's not entirely a question, but it has to do with the a related thing to the pardons, which is clemency. And as much as I hate kings, also, I remember when the governor of Illinois gave clemency to every single person on death row right before he finished his term.
Right before he went to prison himself.
But still, I mean, it was a wonderful,
it was a good deed.
Principled action, I would say. That seems like the justification. But my question, sorry, that wasn't a question. I was listening just for aggravation's sake to the argument, and it was a week on the New York Times argument thing where Ross was the only one still in town, and so he brought. I know. I feel exactly. I don't know why I listen. And so he brought some of his, kind of Gen X conservative buddies on, and they sort of basically made a case for the sort of younger, smarter, more strategic Trump, and I completely agree. I can't imagine that there's any price to be paid for this, except maybe in the sense that Ben had just mentioned, that they make themselves into that party that forces Steve Schmidt to become a Democrat.
Well, look, so I wrote, if you want to check it out, I wrote about this sort of shift earlier this week, maybe last week. I don't know, time flies. For the Bulwark, it was called The Trade, and how I think that there is this big influx of people who were gettable for the Republicans, who are these moderate suburban voters who are now basically Democrats, right? And I sort of coined a term for them, which is called them Red Dog Democrats, and they sort of replace these what used to be Blue Dog Democrats.
I saw that article. That was a really good coinage. I think that it should. I hope it takes off.
Yeah, so I would 6 because the Blue Dogs, right, disagreed with Democrats on a lot of cultural stuff, but were part of the party. They're all Republicans now, basically, and so the Red Dogs now disagree with the Democrats maybe on some of the extent of the Medicare for all and some of these things, but are generally with, I think, a lot of the center left technocratic changes, policy changes. So if that happens and becomes permanent, I think what Ross is saying is correct. Like, my problem is that Ross thinks it's a good thing, right? And like, I think it's deeply scary. But I do think that Ross is correct that, like, if these college-educated, center-right suburbanites move out of the party permanently, then what that means is that the Republicans double down on Trumpism, on a smarter Trumpism, which is this anti-trade, anti-immigrant nationalism, where the party ends up looking much more like European parties. And so I think that Ben is correct that is a death sentence as far as having a national majority is concerned. The problem is they've got the Senate and the Electoral College working for them, and that I do think that party can be a viable party, in a lot of the industrial Midwest and the South and some of the plain states. And, if you get lucky one year like Trump did and sneak a competent Trump into the Oval Office, that's the worst case scenario. I shouldn't be talking about worst case scenarios 3 minutes till the end on Christmas Eve, though. We should maybe.
We have a mouse in our house, and that's so just saying. Like, I ruined the entire poem, just with that. So I'm
there
happy
you go.
David Batts.
All right, two more questions.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Box, the floor is yours. What do you have for us on your? Oh, you've got a picture of Misha.
And then you also have a picture of me watching The Jackal. This was I want to make this thing a meme. I don't know if you can read it, but it's a picture of Bruce Willis sitting very threateningly in this meeting that he has with someone. Don't refer to our arrangement by what is it? Sorry.
Phone or fax.
Yeah.
By telephone or fax.
Telephone or fax.
Never speak of this again.
Yes, and it was just ooh, what a. Anyways, thank you. That was lovely.
Well, first I have to apologize to Ben, because I think in all of the days of Hanukkah, Ben, I think I failed utterly to extend to you a happy Hanukkah.
Hanukkah, but he's okay.
I consider Hanukkah to be a kind of weird celebration of the Taliban-like movement that overtook Judaism in the 2nd century BCE. And so I've never been the more you know about the Maccabees, the less obvious it is that we should be really enthusiastic about them. It's kind of like if, Islam 2,000 years ago had an 8-day Taliban holiday.
You just say thank you, Ben.
But thank you. Your question, sir.
Well, happy Hanukkah. Let me tell you about the Maccabees.
So I was going to wish Merry Christmas to those who observe, and so that was the lead up to the Merry Christmas. So, and Kate, I hope you enjoy your fabulous, very fancy meal over the next 2 days,
Very fancy.
which is super. Tim, really great to hear from you again. I love you on the Bulwark also, and I was super intrigued by your latest appearance. Can you talk a little bit more about the potential for Senators Murkowski and Romney to engage in unconventional thinking and to shake up the Senate?
I can answer that. First, Toulouse wants to just say hi really quick. Say Merry Christmas.
Hi, Merry Christmas.
Oh my God. Hi.
And the other thing I want to say as far as Merry Christmas is concerned is I'm putting in the chat right now my Christmas playlist, which is my pride and joy. So I want to spread at least a little Yuletide cheer before I dash all of your hopes, David. I think that in a different world than the one we live in, I think it would make a lot of sense for Mitt Romney and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins to cut a deal with Chuck Schumer and cut some sort of leadership deal that lets one of them be the majority leader and caucus with the Democrats and basically help Biden get through his appointments and take control of the floor away from Mitch McConnell. It's a fantasy. Tom Friedman actually wrote about this week, so I don't know if this is great minds think alike, or if it shows you how basic I've become, or maybe stole it from me as a Bulwark podcast listener. I don't know, one of those three. But it's just not going to happen. is the reality of it. I think it makes a lot of sense intellectually. I think that what it comes down to is that Collins in particular, but even Romney and Murkowski, I don't think share the view that's probably widely held among this crowd about McConnell. I think that at least Murkowski and Romney share our views of the president, who will no longer be president in 27 days. But I think that while they maybe wouldn't agree with all of McConnell's choices, like on balance, I don't think that they share the antipathy for him that such a defection would require. I think that on balance, they disagree with him on certain things, but don't think that they disagree with him to a degree to create this sort of carve-out caucus. So I don't think it's going to happen. And my other thing is, I do just want to just say hello. Is our president, is my president, Thomas Ilves, there? Is that you in the comments?
Yes,
He is.
That's so
totally
wonderful. Thank you so much
He's
for your
so
support
great.
of the Bulwark and for being here.
We
We talked about how great of a job you did all the time. I wish you were American and you could run. Hello.
I do wish he was American. He could run. Hi, Hillary.
Reverend Hillary Livingston, Reverend Dr. Hillary Livingston, you get the last question. It seems only appropriate that a minister gets the last question.
Well, thank you.
Have matching hats. That's so embarrassing.
I know. I wore this in honor of Tim. Yeah, it's weird for me and other pastors. We're virtual this evening, so after this, I'm going to go watch our church service on TV and kick back after this. So it's kind of weird, but it's nice I can be here live with you all. So Merry Christmas to those celebrating.
Merry Christmas.
And Kate, I love your necklace, by the way. I wanted to get that in. Really cool. And Tim, I really admire your work and have been following you. In fact, I think you're how I got into In Lieu of Fun. I think it was watching one of your conferences. So.
All right. Well, I'll just take 10% of whatever your In Lieu of Fun fee is.
We'll pass over the 0% of that.
There we go. So I really admire and appreciate and can relate to your talking about some of how you kind of have been reevaluating your political beliefs and values and commitments and the introspection with which you're doing that. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what your process is for how you determine like which values, beliefs, commitments you're going to keep and hold on to, which you're letting go, and which you're kind of adapting. So that was
such a great question.
That's a great question. It's, a buffet.
I just went to church.
Whatever looks the grossest.
That's an amazing question. Ugh.
It's, look, it's requiring a lot of reflection, because there's certain things, I guess, there are easy answers to this, right? There were certain elements of the Republican Party and conservative ideology that I thought were gross even when I was part of it, right? But I thought I was part of the good side of this intra-Nicene fight, the nativism, is the prime example of that. I would say. The more challenging part is, how much of, some of the other stuff is intrinsically tied into that, and how much of it isn't. How much can you separate out? And that's an ongoing, thing that I'm thinking about. It's like, look, you don't want to throw out everything, right? I mean, I don't think that just by nature, because the Republican Party has demonstrated itself to be a corrupt, malevolent force, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single thing that they believed was necessarily corrupt and malevolent. But I think that it is important to reflect on which parts are so central to it that you really can't separate it out. And so, I think that in a lot of ways, I try to think about one thing that having this distance has had for me is that I've been able to see what drew people to Republican politics and what drew people to Democratic politics and what those differences are, right? And in some places, I think that the differences are very stark, and I think that is a lot more in process than in policy. I think that there's some policy areas that I've reflected on. We could do a whole show on that. But, in process, man, just the nihilistic and Machiavellian nature of my peers, which I thought was kind of standard ops. When I now that I've spent more time with political operatives who work in democratic politics, I find that like that wasn't actually standard operation, and I think that is really where I've had the deepest kind of reflection, is that I think that the rules are not the same on both sides, and that we need to, and if that isn't fixable, and if you can't make it so that the rules are the same on the both sides, then that means that everything that is being pushed by the side that's cheating is tainted at some level.
Yeah.
Right. And so, that's like the, what I've been trying to go through. And I think that makes you, sort of look through all the policies as well. And, it's already 3:07, so we could do a whole hour on that.
Oh yeah, I was like 3:07. I was like, oh,
I'm sorry. I'm on beautiful
yeah.
Pacific time. It's sunny.
No, I'm just gonna sum up like everything that Tim said is completely correct. I would say that like I don't know, generally like my entire life, like I was very contentious within my own family. That was a conservative Republican family, and they were like elected on a conservative Republican platform, so all of their friends were conservative Republicans, and I grew up in that, and I hated it. Like I never ever like kind of abided by that. But like the thing that is true about all of those people is they weren't bad people, and they wanted good things, and they wanted and so I kind of like I think there's a really hard question to kind of like come down to of like, and this is kind of what the pardon conversation for me brought up, which was just kind of like, what are you actually making decisions based on? Are you making decisions based on like things that confirm an outcome? Or you or could we kind of like build something new and better? Like, let's build something new and better. Like, let's make something that isn't based. It's not that I don't think that executives have an ability to do really good things with a pardon power. They do. It's just that I think that like there should be a new and better way to kind of execute that power, or like kind of create that kind of moment of justice, and that it would be more accountable, it would be more transparent, it would be less mercurial. And I don't know, like that's I guess like my last kind of take. It is 6:08. You have adorable children. Tim, I'm like going to make your baby a hat. I'm gonna knit like a little hat tonight.
A hat? Okay. I don't know her skull circumference, but I'll accept the hat. She probably doesn't
need it for like 68 degrees, but just in case she ever comes.
It gets chilly at night. It gets a little chilly at night in Oakland, so that's great. So we'll definitely take a hat. She'll love it. I'll send a photo. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah. We will be back. Tim will be celebrating Christmas. Many of you will too. But for the truly hardy, in lieu of fun people, we will be back tomorrow, 22 hours, 51 minutes from now. It'll just be Kate and me. I actually have an agenda that I want to discuss with you people.
Oh, we do have an agenda.
We have an agenda item, which we're going to discuss what the proper way to control trolling in the chat is, because as you all know, we've had some issues with it over the last 72 hours, week or so. Tim, you're a great American. We will see you soon, no doubt. Have a great Christmas to you all.
God bless our great
Merry
country.
Christmas,
Merry
Tim.
Christmas.
Love you too.
And we will be back. And until then, we don't have fun anymore, but we do have Christmas. We'll see you tomorrow.